It's Wednesday, let's chat. Hi, I'm Kanan Chandran, the publisher of stormasia.com, and welcome to this week's session of the Wednesday web chat, the WED WEB CHAT. I know we're in a situation where we've got a lot of things going on. The headlines is full of unsettling news, and it's affecting a lot of people. They're forced to work from home, study from home, and they've got still exams to deal with down the line. Examinations are still there, tests are still awaiting for you. So the topic today is the PSLE, which is now going through some changes and which will be implemented on this year's batch. And is it really pushing students too hard? That's the main question we're asking. And I remember when I was studying, doing the PSLE in primary school, it was never a chore, really. It was enjoyable. I still had time for my friends. I did the exams, did whatever had to be done, went on to secondary school and so on and so forth. But now it seems it's all about pressure, pressure, pressure. You've got to do this, you've got to get to that school, you've got to do your tuition, you've got so many things to do. The tuition industry is, I think in 2019 was a $1.4 billion industry. And 80% of parents would send their children to tuition. So it's highly stressful and looks like it's not going to change, right? So today we have in our panel two parents of children who are doing the PSLE and one parent who's put his children through PSLE and is now sitting back and watching them flourish. So we've got Jason Chiam. Jason is currently a senior lecturer in the S.R. Nathan School of Human Development at the Singapore University of Social Sciences, SUSS, and is concurrently pursuing a doctoral degree. His main interests are in organizational behavior, management of people at work, and change management. In his spare time, he volunteers with Children's Society and mentors youths. And his daughter is sitting for the PSLE this year. Welcome, Jason. We've had you before, and it's always good to have you back again.
Thank you, Kanan.
We've got also Yee Jenn Jong, who is a non-constituency member of parliament and who has spoken and written extensively about education, including the PSLE. He has also worked in the education space for nearly 30 years, covering preschools, tertiary, and continuing education. He has put 3 children through the PSLE, which equips him to speak on the topic from experience. Welcome, Jenn Jong. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Kanan.
And we've got Sharon Go, who taught O-level English and English literature at Crescent Girls School, and she's currently running the family food business, Harrian's Nonya Table. Her son is 12 years old and part of the guinea pig batch, as she puts it, and as he puts it, the lab rat group. And he's grappling with the new achievement level system of entry into schools. So welcome, Sharon, as well. Welcome, 3 of you, to this to today's session. I must say up front that I have no children, so my recollection of PSLE is back when I was doing it, which is a totally different ballgame altogether. So I think there are many people out there who are trying to sort of get their heads around the whole PSLE situation, right? So I just wanted to know, what's the difference you see in your children during the PSLE period versus before?
Actually, it really depends on the school culture. So it has been pretty intensive starting from P5, I believe. The school is trying to get them to adapt to the more stringent testings in terms of the paper testings as well as time-based management. And I think there was a lot more homework from the upper primary levels versus the lower primary levels. We also took on the higher mother tongue subjects in P5 and P6, so that added on to a bit more of the workload as well.
So does your son have a chance to enjoy his childhood?
Ethan is 12. He is, I would say, a pretty motivated boy. Enjoyment of childhood, I guess, has many different, very subjective definitions. So he's very happy when he has a chance to relax and play and hang out with the family. but he is also very competitive in a way, I would say, to challenge himself to achieve better grades, to achieve to go for more competitions, to achieve the results that he has set himself, or he believes I have set him. So enjoyment of childhood, yes, he does. He views the little things in life as a pleasure, actually, and he is quite grateful for these things. Of course, he has a lot of homework. He has a lot of enrichment classes, but he also has time to take part in school-based competitions and activities as well. He is the head prefect of his primary school, and that has also given him more a platform to actually put his leadership qualities in use as well.
Okay, great. What's it like for your daughter, Jason?
The experience is almost similar to Sharon. My girl Vera, in the school that she is in the ex-school of the prefect, so she has that leadership responsibility. And she just completed and participated in the badminton national schools game and won. So that's her activity outside of school. Is she stressed? I think she is. Can tell from her body language that she tends to be a little more stressed these days. And she probably is a lot more hardworking than what she was previously, because I think the stress starts coming up because of the amount of work that the schools put them through. So I think it's natural. I think they react to it. So I don't see it going down. I mean, they just finished what they call the mid-year assessment, and as usual, the schools put the paper 3 times harder than what you have than the PSLE. So they come back complaining that it's difficult. But no, that's what all kids, most kids experience anyway. But I guess the badminton and our weekend run sort of take that pressure off them, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Jenn Jong, in your case, you've put 3 through the process. What difference do you see in them pre, during, and post PSLE?
Well, yeah, my eldest is already 27 this year. Youngest is 22. So youngest is in just finished the first year of university. The other 2 have graduated. So yeah, it's been a while since I went through PSLE, but of course, it's probably not very different from even today, because even back in that time, even especially during that time, because the schools were being ranked and branded and sort of became quite important in the kind of performance of the school. So I remember that during the PSLE years, the school may even drop some of those like non-examinable subjects like civil, moral education. I even once brought it up in Parliament after my son's PSLE, then I went to look at all his books and I said, why is this book brand new? Not even touched, not even a single page used. And that was a civil and moral education book. Then, of course, he used to say that was before his time, which is true. I mean, to be fair to him, he came in, he started to emphasize moral and development and other things. So I think that even those times, anything that is not examinable all gets dropped during the PSLE years. Yeah, everything is on that all those core subjects. But for me, my children, they went through it pretty okay, except my eldest one was a bit different, which later, if I have a chance, I will share. I have 3 children, and they're all very different in their academic inclination. So the eldest is a doer. She's a creative left-hander kind of person, but she cannot cope with Chinese. In fact, she got it exempted. And those days, you get exempted, you just don't count in the PSLE, right? These days, no, you get dropped to foundation, straight away you get minus 6 points or even more, right? And she's weaker in math, so that was a big struggle, and she didn't like to go to study. She cannot see the reason why she's studying. She's a doer. You give her some projects or things to do, she will do. But studying for something that is just going to be a short exam, she's totally unmotivated. So we actually struggled through 10 years of schooling until she went to poly. She chose the course she wanted, and then later she went to uni. She furthered on what was her strength, and she ended up as a valedictorian from almost failing PSLE. So I mean, it's a totally different experience, but I'll share more if there's a chance later.
Okay, so it's still very purpose-driven, right, the PSLE. And now, what do you think of the new set of requirements to enter secondary school that that will be implemented this year. How has that changed your approach to guiding your children to the PSLE now? Sharon, have you changed your tack in any way?
Frankly, no. It's all along, I believe, competition, regardless of the AL or the T-score scoring system, is already there in the system. So basically, no matter how MOE seeks to benchmark children, I think what we parents have to do is basically motivate and push our children to achieve the best that they can achieve. We set our sights on DSA as a mode of entry into secondary school. That was since last year. Actually, frankly, I didn't find out about the DSA integrated program till last year when chatting with a group of friends. And that was when, after discussing with Ethan, and we chose a school that is nearby our home. That's very important for us to actually minimize traveling time. And in IP is something that I believe can actually give him even more opportunities outside the textbook to learn and to grow as a future leader in Singapore, to grow in terms of EQ. So we set our sights on DSA to a particular school in the East quite some time ago, and he has been working very, very hard to achieve the grades that he needs to get, as well as to build his portfolio, which is, if you look at the Kiangsu Parents Forum chat group, basically, no portfolio, no goal. There will be no way you can even smell the DSA, especially to an IP school. Yeah, so I did not change my method in actually molding Ethan. I guess we have been competitive from the start. So it is about him achieving the best that he can achieve, not so much in competition with his friends. So it has always been an AL scoring to me. But every single mark now he knows is very important in terms of AL, because if you make one careless mistake, it could just cost you one AL. So he's very, very, he has become a more cautious, taken a more cautious approach in terms of doing his papers as well.
Isn't the T-score much more critical of your individual mark, because it's an absolute amount as opposed to AL, which is a band, isn't it? So if you slip within that band... But if you take a look
at the entry into the schools, the cutoff points, it has been very stringent. So even neighborhood schools, we see even a 12-point cutoff. So if you're looking at AL, and basically you need to get like 3 per subject to make it to that particular neighborhood school. So it is, and you don't even need to talk about the top schools. You don't even need to even think about and consider about getting into a top school. So I believe parents will, because of the AL scoring, flock to the DSA route as well. Nurture talent, hopefully they can get the child into a school that they desire. So it will also put some stress onto the child. So we've been talking in parents chat groups and all that. So there's lots of, I also attended a course online recently, a workshop. So not all children who actually get into DSA, let's say using a particular CCA, can cope with the requirements of the school. So basically, I ironed that out with Ethan. It's really, really not easy, and he has to manage his time very well. There have been lots and lots of CCAs, enrichment, there's been competitions, debate competitions, oratorical competitions, and he has really been lacking sleep for the longest time. Yeah, but as long as you enjoy what you're doing, I believe, stress is something that he can manage, he should manage. We never talk about stress, this word, at home, because I don't hang it around my lips. If the parent keeps perpetuating this notion of stress to the child, the child will say, yeah, I'm very stressed. But if we take an approach and we say, okay, you can do it, okay? If you try your very best, if you cannot, then as long as you have tried your very best, then there's nothing else we can say about it. Yeah, but don't worry, don't stress yourself, don't keep talking about stress, because you rather take the time to do something than to talk about being stressed or to worry about being stressed.
That's a positive way of looking at it, right?
We have no
So,
choice in Singapore.
Jason, your daughter didn't want to do the, or went for the DSA but didn't accept it for some reason. Care to talk a bit about what that strategy is?
That's for my eldest one. My younger one wasn't interested. The Vera who is doing her PSLE this year wasn't interested in any DSA. So the elder one, who is now in Crescent, she went for a few DSAs. And actually, the very reason why she went for DSA was because she just wanted to know what the DSA was like, right? So she gamely, went for all the interviews, went for all the selection, and then in the end, she was fortunate enough to be offered DSA, I think, in 2 or 3 schools, and rejected all, including the school that she's currently in. They offered a DSA and rejected it, right? And she chose to go back via the PSLE route because, in her opinion, she felt that that was probably the better route for her rather than DSA. So, I mean, it's her choice, and that was how she ended up going for the DSA in various schools, but in the end up going back to the PSLE route to actually go into her secondary school, which offered her the DSA in the first place.
How does it differ entering by DSA versus the PSLE route when you actually get into the school?
They will lower the cutoff mark for those who are on DSA. So, for example,
I know that's getting in, but once you're in, is there any difference?
The slight difference is that if you're on the DSA route, depending on what you're DSA in, you need to be in that particular. So for example, let's say you DSA in through sport, for example, right? Let's say badminton, soccer, whatever. You need to be part of the school team for that. There's no way you can withdraw from it. But if you're going through the PSLE route, then the choice is yours. You can choose to do whatever activities you want, and that was actually what she was more interested in rather than, So she tried it, realized that that's not what she wants, rejected the offer, and then went into the normal PSLE route.
Okay, so I guess she wanted the option of choice, right? If she wanted to do something because she wanted to do it, then she could, but not because she was compelled to do it.
No, she wasn't. We didn't force her. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe I jumped in here, although
please. Yeah.
Even though my children in their time they had DSA, didn't really try that. They just thought it wasn't necessary, just see where they actually end up with. But I have friends who actually went for the DSA through sports into some of the top schools. And I know one of them unfortunately couldn't cope because it went into one of the best schools in Singapore. And so sometimes you have to also be realistic whether your child, you can get into the top school, whether they can end up staying there. So in the end, the child, after 2 years with the school, dropped out and went into another school, in fact, to a more international kind of environment. Yeah, so I think parents who want to go to the DSA route also must firstly see whether your child you think will suit their school. Because now the trouble with many people think that, I just need to get into the top schools. I think this has been something conditioned into us, unfortunately, because the system over the many years since there have been changes in the PSLE system, and then we started ranking, branding school, publishing, which are the top schools. People start to say, I just want to get my child into the best schools. But sometimes we need to ask, is it really good for them? Right? Will they be able to adjust inside it? Because there have been people who are in the top schools that end up dropping out because they couldn't cope with the IP program. They went back into normal schools, or they went into polytechnic in the end.
Yeah. So how is it for your children? Do they feed on the competitive nature of other students, or do they get, are they sort of...
Ethan has had lots of opportunities to partake in very varied competitions. So his school, he became the senior prefect in P5, and then now he is the head prefect in P6. And then because of his CCA, he was also chosen to take part in debates and represent the school. And fortunately, they got into the quarterfinals, which is no mean feat. There are 40 schools involved, and he is one of, there's a top 10 award for all the good speakers in the whole Division 2, and he won that as well. Also, he took on some oratorical role in some competitions in Chinese, and that's no mean feat for my son because I used to teach English and I cannot do Mandarin. So we are very thankful that the school has nurtured him to the best of his abilities. I believe it's the the school, all schools are good schools, but the teachers are the ones who make it work. And we are very fortunate that Chiam Primary is an awesome school that has developed even since P1. And the teachers have really shown individualized care and concern for each child.
Okay. So that's great because it helps to build the students' confidence as well. I mean, I think Ethan's also got a book in the offing, right? He's writing a book now?
So yes, he is writing a book that actually traces our family business that spans across 4 generations. He pens it from the eyes of the 4th gen owner of Harry Ann's Nonya Table. So this book will be launched sometime Q3 this year. Because of COVID issues, it is almost ready to meet the world, and it will be distributed to libraries in Singapore, different schools, as well as the e-book and the physical book will also be sold in major bookstores in and outside of Singapore. And of course, hopefully this will actually help in his DSA application as well to the school of his choice.
Okay. So, but it's great that you can bring in a lot of your other activities into your sort of process of entering secondary school, isn't it? As opposed to back in my time, it was just your grades and that's all that mattered. So it's a bit more holistic in that regard, yeah. But it's a bit more demanding as well for children because of the competitive nature of everything. So the school obviously matters. I mean, the right school for your child it's an important call to make, right? So are there enough opportunities to make that call and to have it fulfilled? Jason, for you, did you have any issues with getting your children into the right schools? Right schools in your mind?
Right school in primary school or in secondary school?
Well, it's primary as well as on to secondary.
I think the primary school environment she's in, there are a lot of opportunities for the students to participate in all kinds of activities. And the good thing is that they don't really say that, oh, because you must, like for badminton, right? She took part in the badminton competition. She started off not knowing how to play badminton, but that didn't stop the school from taking her in, and then she developed along the way. So I think that's good. But it's also very competitive. I think one point which I may want to add is that all schools are good schools. I think that's whether you believe it or not, I do think that every school has its good values, but a lot of it has to do with the environment that the school operates in. And inevitably, what I feel is that there are some primary schools in Singapore where the pressure tends to be greater than the others. Nanyang, Rosai, and some of the better schools tends to have this kind of competition among the parents themselves, which is, I don't think is very healthy actually, right? So they will push each other to do a lot of things, and unfortunately, the school that Vera is in, I would say it falls into that category as well. It's very competitive. So a lot of kids are trying to outdo each other. A lot of parents trying to outdo each other. Parents volunteering to support all kinds of activities. But that in itself is good because there's a lot more activities that are not offered in the other schools that are offered at this primary school that she's in. On the path to secondary school, I do think that at the end of the day, I still a firm believer that it has to be based on the kid's ability and on what she gets out of her PSLE. Because I'm an educator myself, I've seen many cases like what was mentioned earlier, to say that people have dropped out of good schools, like what JJ has mentioned, right? And not doing well in the good schools, and subsequently end up having a lot of other issues. So I'm a firm believer that based on ability, you pick the schools that you want to go based on whatever marks they've obtained. And I do believe that there is a lot more pathways open up. So I'm a lot more less sticky about what school she picks. My only criteria is please pick a school that is within X hours of traveling time. Don't go and stay in the West and go pick a school in the East and you spend 2 hours traveling. That to me doesn't make sense.
But if you're studying from home, it doesn't matter, right, where your school is.
Hopefully you're not like that.
Seriously though, what has what sort of impact would COVID have on your children who are doing the exam? I mean, for one, they aren't in school, they don't have the physical interaction, they are forced to get coaching and training from home. So mother becomes tutor, becomes disciplinary, because everything. So no escape from that connection. So how will your children fare? I mean, do you think they could have done better if it had not been for COVID, or do you think COVID might have brought something else out in them which makes them shine in their own way?
I don't have anecdotal evidence to say, because the elder one went through before COVID in 2019. My second one is now doing it in the midst of this home-based learning. But if you ask the kid, surprise, I don't know whether Sharon, Ethan feels the same way, but for Vera, she don't like home-based learning. She misses the interaction that she goes to school with and talking to teachers. Because learning, they felt that, at least she tells me that it's very much, they're still trying to grapple with this whole concept of home-based learning. I think they're comfortable, familiar with it, but do they like it? Whether is anything missing? I don't have evidence to show otherwise, because last year was a modified year. They modified so much of the syllabus, not so much so that I myself don't even know what is going to be tested, what's going to be tested, right? So it's hard for me to make a comment about that. Maybe after, when the results are released, we can have another chat about it.
I think the teachers have it very bad this time round, because the face-to-face interaction is very important for them to even understand whether the children, do they even grasp what is being taught. So online learning is what to do right now, that's the only way out. But for the kids, I think most of them do not enjoy online learning, because you can see some children on the screen, basically they're not paying attention, and there are so many children online, and how is the teacher going to even catch you if you are reading a storybook, So unfortunately, that's the way to go for now.
Maybe I'll jump in here also. I think also it depends on the home environment as well. So unfortunately, last year's the COVID situation, which I was involved because I'm also into some learning business, and you can see the vast difference between the have and the have-nots, or the people with better family support. So I'm also in political work, and then sometimes we go into the rental flats. So imagine a rental flat, one room, 4 kids. Even if we can give them the computer, how are they going to do Zoom all at the same time? It will be so noisy, So that's a big challenge. And I think another challenge is that Singapore, our class sizes are still very big compared to OECD countries. Right, we're about double, or at least most OECD countries are around 20. We are 30 to 40. So the problem is that how much attention can you give when you're on the Zoom and then you have like 40 kids to look after? So I think the challenge will be greater in a COVID situation, in a home-based situation, for those without the family support. Actually, interestingly, although I've been introduced as having 3 kids that have totally gone through PSLE, I've recently become the legal guardian and also of a child who's in the upper primary, staying in my house now. So actually now she's doing home-based learning at home. So so I'm getting to see some of these issues as well firsthand. Yeah, but
so it's quite different to what your 3 children have been through. Do you see that difference?
So we only got her recently, so we have to understand her nature and also try to help her adjust to schools and where she has been lagging behind others. But you see behind also, I have I'm in the office now. I have also involved in an online assessment and learning business called Explico. So in fact, because of that, we're also motivated to give free lessons for those who are from the poorer background. So we have a bursary program going on now under Explico. Then so far we have about maybe 30 kids who have signed up under the free ones if they are from the low income family background. Yeah.
So how would a kid get a bursary? How would they sign up for it?
You just go and apply to the form there, and then if they are on the financial assistance scheme or they're on the blue trust card kind of thing, then they'll automatically qualify. I wanted to share from my own children experience. They didn't go to top schools. In fact, all 3 of them went to neighborhood schools in secondary. Primary schools they just went to my wife's alma mater and also my alma mater, so which was pretty much neighborhood as well. So, but I think what I noticed was that, and what's important, I wanted this message for the people whose kids maybe will not have the chance to get into the top schools and maybe feeling that they're missing something out in the education system. At least I can share from the end point now that they're all, two of them are already working and one is in university, or eventually made it to our local university, different route. The first one, I mentioned, struggled through 10 years in primary, secondary schools. Every month I'll get, or my wife especially, will get caught by the teachers, sometimes a couple of teachers for various reasons. O-levels, before the O-levels, the Sec 4 prelims exams wouldn't get her anywhere except in the most undesirable course in the Polytechnic. But the 2 months before my wife gave her a pep talk, she decided to put some effort in, and then she managed to get to the course of her choice. Interestingly, through a sort of DSA as well, because she actually missed the cutoff by 1 point, but because of a portfolio that she did with my company, doing some ebooks, she managed to use that during the interview to get into the course. But because she's more a doer and then she hated math, she didn't have to do math in poly anymore because she went into early childhood. And then when she went eventually to the university program, it was a joint American and Singapore system. And in the American system, if you're a doer, you're someone who can stand up and present very well, you will score, which she did. I mentioned that she ended up the top of the whole cohort from almost failing the PSLE. And she went into the express stream mainly because her Chinese score was not counted, because she was exempted for some learning disability. As for my other two kids, they each found their own calling in life, which is something that I thought would be important for parents to also understand what eventually your child will want to do in life. So the first one found her calling in early childhood. She's still in the industry now. The second one is more people person. So she ended up doing social studies in social work, in NUS, and she's a social worker now, enjoying what she's doing. The youngest one is actually a more hands-on creative person. So he went to school, he went to take part in all those robotics competition, represented the school and Singapore and so on. Eventually now she's in SUTD, which is a course that he badly wanted to be in, and thankfully he's there. So he's doing very well because my house is full of 3D printers and stuff like that. He's doing a business out of it even, right? So I think it's important that sometimes the competition in the schools tend to force you in a certain ways, but not all of us have the chance to get into the top schools. Not all of us have the chance to win competitions or stuff like that. But it's important that your child develop the confidence in what they're doing. And hopefully, for us, most of the time, in fact, for my 3 kids, they found their calling a little later on in secondary school and even later, but they managed to flourish because they found what they wanted to do.
Great. I think those are all very good life lessons to impart to students who are maybe taking the exam at any point in time. And there was the whole thing about tuition and enrichment classes, and they want to know, what does it cost to put your child through PSLE? What is the cost to you? Jenn Jong, you've done it once before already, so or 3 times before.
Honestly, it really depends on you. My eldest 2 didn't go through any tuition at all. So the last one, we just put him through math towards the last 3 months because my friend started, one of the ex-teachers started her own learning. So then we just put him with her for a while. Oh yes, they had some Chinese help because of the family environment. But it really depends. So because
what would that have cost you think?
It didn't cost me much because whether you went, the question is whether you have additional private help or not. So anyway, it really varies when you're in the learning business because they're the premium centers. There's also the mass centers, and right now we started a online learning program as well, which basically lowers the cost because it's more a mass market thing. So yeah, it really depends on. But I think people tend to have this thing about wanting to outsource their issue, the learning to outside. But I think what's important is also whether how is the family support structure, whether you are prepared to invest the time in that as well with your own children and to go through the experience together.
How about you, Sharon and Jason? What do you think the bill's going to come out to?
For me, I outsource the math because I have a lot of issues about the math syllabus in Singapore, especially the modeling method. I completely couldn't even explain and understand the modeling method. So I just outsourced the entire thing because I felt that I would not be doing a good service to the girls if I insisted on trying to figure my way out of the modeling method. I just gave up. So I outsourced the math. For Chinese, we have been doing enrichment classes, so there's no tuition, but more enrichment classes. We started the two of them quite young because we felt that was something fundamental. And so for Chinese, we have actually all along we had enrichment for all the while. I mean, it's a group kind of thing. We just go to the center. But for math, I really had to enlist personal tuition because I was struggling with the subject myself. I mean, understanding the
new way of this is mainly for things like simultaneous equations and all that, right? All got tossed out the window.
They
replaced by diagrams.
Yeah, they do that later. Yeah. And I think for science, is my issue with science is not so much the topics, but Singapore has a very weird way of insisting that you must answer based on answer keys, which sometimes baffles me completely. I mean, I've written to Ng Chi Ming, I've written to the school principal, I've written to the Department of Science, asking them at the end of the day, what value does this bring? Well, they come back with very airy-fairy answers, which it's just, to me, 10 years down the road, people will remember exactly that at that point in time, this particular answer was what matters. To me, it doesn't matter. So, yeah.
But for now, it matters in the PSLE.
Yeah. It kind of does.
It should not be the way how applications, especially the answering keys. I think that is really not quite what the world is today. I mean, we're living in a world where it's so volatile. 10 years down the road, nobody will remember that at this particular point in time, this question requires to answer that particular way. And that has always been my pet peeve about science. But I didn't outsource science. I mean, to me, it's just a way of answering. I think that's one they just got to practice. But I'm outsourced math.
Sharon, how about yourself?
I grappled with English, math, science, all the way till the start of this year. So Chinese has always been outsourced. I am really not confident. The 老师 will say, you taught him wrongly. This is not the correct Hanyu pinyin. So I give up. So pay. And from a boy who refused to open his mouth to answer in Mandarin, he has now been tasked to take on higher mother tongue and even represent the school for oratorical competitions. I think the teachers have done a very good job, but it's really not cheap. 2 weeks, I just cite you an example, 2 weeks of the June enrichment program that I signed him up for cost me $1,300. Yeah, so it's the written comprehension, the composition, and the oral, 1.3K just for 2 weeks of the teacher's time. And now everything has moved to Zoom. So we don't know how good that will be. But since P1, I've been his science, math, and English tutor. Till the start of this year, I outsourced the math and the science as well to a school online. I also had pulled out some of my hair to answer math questions. I tried to ask my parent chat group friends and all that, but sometimes I really cannot understand how this question can be asked and how they expect a 12-year-old to actually answer this kind of questions. It's really, okay, never mind. So for the science part, I agree with Jason. It's so stringent in the marking scheme, and the child already has gotten the keywords, but the phrasing is wrong, or maybe it left out one particular keyword, and the full marks some of the marks will be deducted. So it's very sad. Singapore is very stringent in terms of their marking. We understand that, but I believe the open-ended questions need to be given more flexibility in terms of marking.
More latitude.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like it's still a very forced system where you have to work within boundaries. You don't get the chance to push and be creative. Am I correct in saying that?
Creativity in answering questions, better don't try. Follow what the teachers ask you for, and every tick will get a half mark or 1 mark, and by the end of the day, you will get that mark that is required of you.
So reserve your creativity for post-exam or outside of school activities, right?
Outside of
Not
school.
within. Okay.
You know what the teachers want, and then you'll get there. Yeah.
I think the secondary school environment is probably a little bit better. I think at the PSLE level, what's creativity? Can someone spell that for me, please? It just doesn't exist. I mean, I think I'm speaking. I've gone through. Jen Jong has 3. This is my second one. Both girls, the experiences tells me is that in PSLE, just follow, whatever that's been prescribed to you. Don't deviate. If you follow, you're likely to score. If you deviate, you'll get half a mark here. But to me, it's pointless. It's really quite meaningless to do education like that.
That's right. I was going to say that when you get to the older level, things get a little better. But nevertheless, because of our whole society and the whole way the MOE want to run this, because you don't want to complain and all that, so you basically want to have a more standardized way of doing things. But as you go to the older level, especially at the tertiary level, then I think, of course, there's more scope for you to be more creative. And at least I like the way now that our tertiary institutions, including polys and universities, have a sort of interview process for you to get in. So you don't just get in by the marks itself, you get in by proving how much you really want this course and how you can answer things on the go, kind of things. At the primary school level, unfortunately, I don't see much change. It's still going to be keywords. Yeah.
There's a question here on that point as well from Roy Ong, who's asking, in this case, what would the panelists have to comment with regards to whether children can be or are made to excel academically because of the financial ability of their parents? So does money help you get a better education? And I suppose the other side to this is, what about children who are gifted and who are smart but don't have the financial means to get that to shine?
I think there's always going to be some people citing examples of how people from rental flats, low-income family, or that manage to shine through. But by and large, I think the evidence is that given a system where you have a standardized exams for testing and all that, then you find that definitely you can even drill your way into gifted programs without being really gifted. You can actually get yourself into some of the better schools. I think this has been evidenced before. I think the late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew once asked about the background of the family, of the children in Raffles, and you find that most of them come from graduate background. And you look at, like, for example, the kind of cars that are waiting outside some of those top schools and all that. So obviously, you under a standardized testing systems, you can get in. You can sort of buy your way into a slightly better system. But of course, it doesn't mean that people who don't have that advantage will always be left out. It's just that it's more challenging, and maybe sometimes it builds up more resilience in them to all this adversity, right? Because if they can manage to break through, then it's even better. But having said that, as I mentioned before, all my 3 children went to neighborhood schools. I think the important thing is that, I didn't want them to feel like they're behind anybody, who are in the better schools. And eventually they found their calling. They all did very well in the university. So I think it's the end destination that you want. I always have this quote in my mind that education is not about identifying the winners, but making the winners out of ordinary people. And of course, it's a very idealistic situation, whether in a mass education it is possible. I honestly went through the 10 years of compulsory education. And it's not compulsory, but of course 6 years is compulsory, and then you go through another 4 years by default. It's pretty much standardized up to that point. Yeah.
Okay, so we are at the 1:31 mark, so we've reached the end of this session. A lot of points were raised. I think I'd just like to ask one other last question. Sharon, you, in the prior conversations on chat that we've had, you mentioned support groups and family support groups. Is there is that an important aspect of raising the child for you? You know, to have that support of parents groups, and for you, Jason, as well, whether that was so.
Yes, because if you cannot do the math questions, you can always ask them for help. But yes, in terms of knowing what's going on, what is best for our child, I believe parents, we have to know. So basically, understanding your child is very important, but helping your child to reach his or her own potential is also very important. So like what I mentioned previously, I did not even know there was a DSA, and I did not even know there was a DSA to an integrated program until last year when there was a discussion with my girlfriends. So it helps to keep us abreast of things and what's going on, and to find the best practices for our child.
Okay, Jason?
I think the WhatsApp or the parent support group is good for finding out, what are some of the things that happen in school, because everyone of us are so occupied with things that sometimes you may miss out the things. I think it's good for that purpose. I tend to steer away when it becomes a little bit more of the, what's the right word to use? Let me give you an example. I have mentioned this before to kind of, the principal of the school that my girl is in, they changed the principal, I think about 3 years ago. And the very first reaction that came from a WhatsApp in the tool was, I want to go and find out what's the PSLE history of this new principal, whether the school that he comes from, the PSLE results are good. That was the first reaction. And that is something which I get myself a bit upset. I try to not get into those discussions because I think it's pointless. But I think it's useful for finding out what's going on in the school and things like that.
So it's that's probably a spillover effect of the social media experience, isn't it? Trying to drill down and find things about people. Well, that's the environment that your children will be growing up into, and they'll need to understand that as well. The whole aspect of learning beyond the books will be quite important. I guess that's where the family, the friends become important. COVID will probably make that a bit more challenging because you will not have the physical interaction, but you still can learn from so many other aspects and avenues, right, of how to learn about life, which is, as Jenn Jong, you said, what's the end game, right? The end game is to try and enjoy the stretch of your life, the full runway of your life. Make the most of it. So I think the PSLE is probably just a little speed bump in that journey. You got to get over it. It's a hurdle, right? If it's how well you clear it, then you'll have an easier run maybe further along.